Hi, what's up? It's Plugged On. My name's Keith, and I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore when I reviewed Stranger Things, so it looks really odd. But I'm here with a movie review of Thor Ragnarok, the latest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So this movie came out November 3rd, Friday of this year, 2017, and stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor and has Tom Hiddleston, Kate Blanchett, Jeff Goldblum, Mark Ruffalo, a lot of the people that you expect to see in the Thor movies. And this movie is a sequel of Thor: The Dark World and Avengers: Age of Ultron in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit just in general about the movies, and then maybe a little bit later into the review, I'll talk some spoilers. So, the movie essentially follows up a little bit on what Thor has been up to since Avengers: Age of Ultron, and it's essentially how Hela, the goddess of death, played by Kate Blanchett, comes back. And she's decided she's going to try to rule Asgard and basically take over the entire universe. And she ends up fighting Thor and Loki, which leads to Thor being stranded on the planet called Sakaar, where he ends up running into characters like the Grand Master, Scrapper 142, who happens to be a Valkyrie, and the Hulk, who is the champion. And so it's basically like somewhat of a Planet Hulk adaptation. The story is basically, in a lot of ways, him trying to figure out how to be the God of Thunder without Mjolnir, because as revealed in the trailer, Hela destroys Mjolnir. I mean, that's not a spoiler. It happens in the trailer. And then it's basically that and him putting together a team to try to save Asgard. So let's start with like the acting. I think with the acting and the feeling of this movie, I feel like acting-wise, this is a good Chris Hemsworth performance. There's a lot more laughs in this one. It's very much definitely more funny movie, because I think the first two Thor movies were very, very serious, very overly serious, and they definitely turned up the laughs on this one. And though I don't think it's as bad as like Age of Ultron, I feel like the jokes kind of pay off a lot more on this one. There's a lot of more adult jokes, which is maybe Marvel looking at like what Logan did and things like that. Maybe, I mean, even though I think the majority of the production for this movie probably ended before Logan had came out, but like there's a lot of swearing. There's an orgy joke in there. There's this place called the Devil's Anus, which they make a point of saying by name quite a few times, and so they kind of up the laughs. And the movie feels very Guardians of the Galaxy, which is extra funny when you think about some of the things about the movie. So you have the Grand Master, who looks like the Collector, who's played by Benicio del Toro. And then kind of Sakaar looks like very much a Guardians of the Galaxy world, and very much like the aesthetic of it. It looks very much like that. Then also you look at the main characters, it kind of makes sense. Like now, if you don't kind of count Groot, you kind of have each of the four Revengers, which is the funny name that Thor comes up with in the movie. They kind of each represent a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, Thor is obviously Star-Lord. Loki is like kind of like, he's a conniving person, kind of like Rocket Raccoon. There's obviously Hulk is similar to like Drax, in which he's just like angry and he just likes to punch things. And then Valkyrie is like Gamora. So it's very much, I got a lot of a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe from this movie, which maybe helps to set up, because I know like from the Comic-Con thing that they showed off for Avengers Infinity War, Thor ends up running into the Guardians of the Galaxy, which they set up with the after credit scene, but that's neither here nor there. I mean the performances a lot of them are okay. Like you spend more time with Hulk than you do Bruce Banner, so you don't really get to see as much of him being like a tortured soul. And again, with the laughs turned all the way up, it's a little bit more for comedic effect, though getting to spend more time with the Hulk is a bit interesting, and getting a little bit more into the character dynamic of the Hulk and Bruce Banner and their kind of competing stories. And then Loki does a pretty okay job. I mean, it's just a continued story in the saga of Loki versus Thor. And again, I feel like there were good moments, but I feel like there could have been more. I think the biggest thing maybe that this movie suffers from plot-wise is that in some ways the movie tries to do too much. You know, they don't do a whole lot in terms of connecting it to Age of Ultron. I mean, with the exception of like explaining how Hulk got to Sakaar, or a couple references to in the beginning of the movie of how Thor was looking for the Infinity Stones but he didn't find them, and things like that. It's mostly, there's a lot of callbacks because this movie tries to do the Ragnarok story, which is a pretty big story in the comics and I mean in Norse mythology in general. It tries to follow up and kind of continue some of the threads that Thor: The Dark World had, and then it also tries to be a Planet Hulk movie, and then plus adding that to sort of the comedy factor. Even though I think it works for the most part, I think it kind of gets jumbled a little bit because you don't feel as much for the characters. You know, they don't really look at Thor and Loki's relationship as deeply as I would have wanted, because, you know, Loki makes Thor think he was dead and then impersonates Odin. And, you know, Thor kind of brings that up, but then they don't explore that as deeply as maybe I would have hoped. Or the scenes where they do explore that aren't as deep as I would have hoped. And sort of the same thing. Like, they're bouncing back and forth so much, I'm not sure, you know, you don't get to see more of Bruce Banner suffering as the Hulk as much. You know what I mean? They don't... I just kind of get the feeling that the movie kind of tries to do a little too much. But I think overall the movie does succeed. I think Cate Blanchett is a great villain. It's just another fault of this movie is that you don't get to spend as much time with her, you know, because you're kind of competing. I mean, the movie's about Thor, so you spend a lot of time on Sakaar. So besides when she first shows up and her like initial confrontation with Thor and Loki, and then one battle scene after she gets to Asgard, and then the ending of the movie, you just kind of get snippets of scenes with her. And it's like, where she's not really doing a whole lot. And so, in some ways, you don't feel that she's as big of a threat as she could have been. So I think, you know, again, and I understand some of the choices made, you know, because it make Marvel doesn't have the rights to the Hulk movies, so like they can't do a solo Hulk movie, so they're trying to do a story arc over the course of, I mean, starting in Thor Ragnarok, this one, and then in Avengers Infinity War, and then the fourth Avengers movie, there's a 3-story arc involving the Hulk, in which I'm assuming involves like Bruce Banner and kind of like him trying to fight the Hulk in some ways. But maybe they could have come off a little bit better in some ways, because it just seemed that they just kind of, a lot of things kind of just work out a little too nicely in my opinion. Jeff Goldblum was a good Grand Master. The Grand Master is a very interesting character. He's an antagonist. I wouldn't maybe go as far as to call him a villain per se, because he's just kind of in the way of Thor and everybody. But like, I feel like there was so much, again, probably that's my biggest complaint of the movie. There's so much happening. You don't get to explore some of the relationships. You don't get to explore Thor and Valkyrie kind of in their relationship any further. I mean, granted, what's the actress's name? Give me 2 seconds while I look at this. Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie. I mean, maybe she's supposed to be in more Marvel movies, so maybe they'll explore her and Thor's relationship a little bit further. Maybe if they do more Thor movies, which is a little bit up there. Maybe she's going to be in Avengers somehow. But I'm just curious as to what they're going to do going forward. Because, like, the ending for this movie definitely, especially the post-credit scene, definitely sets up the next of the Avengers. Not Age of Ultron, Infinity War. And so I'm just curious as to, like, you know, what this means, because there's kind of a lot of loose ends left open at the end of this one. Are they planning on doing more Thor movies or not? So I spent a lot of time talking about the plot, but like a lot of other things are great. Like just the locales are great. I mean, Asgard's always a great place to go. Sakaar is again a very interesting planet. It looks like a junkyard. It's basically like a giant junkyard besides like a palace in some ways. We're in the arena where the Grand Master has his fights and whatnot, where he has slaves or they, what do you call them? Unpaid workers, unpaid servants is what he called them, which is another one of those little cheap haha moments. And the soundtrack is really good. I mean, for one, they use Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, I think twice during the opening fight sequence and then towards the end of the movie during a big fight sequence. But there's kind of like a very synth heavy soundtrack that kind of gives it this more of like a space road trip kind of feel, and which I think works. Like I said, I just wish that maybe some of the sequences we would have a little bit more time. Some sequences were like, well, you could have made this sequence a lot shorter and we could have spent more time dissecting Thor and Loki's relationship, because even though they have a lot of scenes, it's just like you don't get to see that much, and so I just feel like there's a little much happening in this movie. So I'm gonna give my score, and then I'll do a little spoiler section. So I'd give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Basically, I'll give it a 7.5 because I think it's better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which was not a bad movie in any sense. I just feel like it didn't work as well, but I don't think it's as good as Spider-Man Homecoming. I think Spider-Man Homecoming is the Marvel movie of the year. I don't think Thor Ragnarok can usurp that. I just don't think it can. But yeah, so yeah, 7.5. It's a great movie. I think it's the best of the Thor movies, and a great follow up to those movies. And it's a fun movie. Like, you're gonna have a lot of fun watching this movie. It's just, I was kind of maybe hoping for a little bit more. Okay, spoiler section. So if you don't want any spoilers, kind of don't watch here. So I was a little bit surprised because they kind of brought back Odin, and then Odin kind of dies really quickly. Like, within the first 20 minutes of the movie, Odin's dead. And you feel the emotional impact a little bit just because he was in the previous two movies, but at the same time, it seemed like that was just like, we're just getting through a plot point. Odin's dead. Just get rid of him. Same kind of thing with Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was in the movie for all of 5 minutes, to the point where it's like, you could have not had him in the movie. Yeah, you could have completely not had Doctor Strange in the movie. And I feel like then, like I said, you could have had more runtime to explore some of these other relations. Even if it's just a couple short scenes, you could have had more time to explore either Thor and Loki's relationship, Thor and Valkyrie's relationship, the Hulk and Bruce Banner relationship. I just feel like you could have spent a little bit more time on things like that. The whole thing with Surtur and Ragnarok and him destroying Asgard, like, it was a thing in the intro of the movie, and then it was basically their Deus Ex Machina of how they beat Hela because she's too powerful. Again, there's a very Deus Ex Machina, and even though I think it worked and there's nothing inherently wrong with it, it's like, oh, that's just, it can't. I can understand somebody thinking that comes off as it's a little bit cheap, just because it's like, oh yeah, here's this very little thing that had very little to do with the beginning of the movie, but boom, this is how we're gonna beat the main villain. And then so they destroy Asgard, and so the Asgardians and Thor becomes the king of Asgard, and they have to go find a new home, and I guess they decide to go to Earth. And one of the things that happens in Thor's fight with Hela, which first off, he kind of learns to channel the powers of thunder without Mjolnir, which is very cool looking, and I really like that idea, and I thought that was a really cool idea and purpose. But one of the things that happens is, like, she cuts out his eye, or she slashes him in the eye, and it, like, destroys his eye. And it was such just a quick, like, boom. It was just such a quick moment that I was like, oh, Valkyries are, they also, like, in, like, a lot of myths, they can heal people. So I'm like, oh, he'll get his eye back. But then no, he wears, like, an eye patch, like Odin does. And I'm like, I don't know, that just seemed like it's just such a quick, like, boom, and you'll miss a thing. And I'm like, wow, okay, so Thor's not gonna have an eye anymore. And yeah, like, Thor and Loki's relationship is cool because, like, they go over Loki just basically strands Odin on Earth and is almost slightly responsible for Odin's death in some ways. And then they talk about their relationship, how Loki's always just going to try to trick Thor, and how, Thor can't trust him, and a bunch of things like that. But then they don't dive any deeper into it, and then you get to the end of the movie, and Loki's just like with Thor. He's like, yeah, I'm with you, brother. And it's like, bruh. It's just like a couple little things like that are my main issues with the movie. Like, again, they bring up one of the things, like, with the Planet Hulk stuff, was like, you spend a lot of time with Hulk, and then when they get to Bruce Banner, and Bruce is like, look, I'm not sure if I become the Hulk, if I'll ever be able to turn back, which is like a cool thing, but it's like, again, it's another such a little quick moment that I'm like, maybe you're doing too much, because this moment should have a lot more impact in a lot of ways. I just feel like they kind of took a step back with some of the more impactful moments and just didn't really ride them out. But yeah, so like I said, I give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Check out the other movie reviews and other videos that are going up. There should be we're ranking the Trivium albums. That should be going up rather soon. Check out this most recent breakdown, which goes out the same day as today. We talk about a lot of new video games that come out and a lot of things looking forward to the future and whatnot. So yeah, I shall talk to you guys later.